When should you be patient, and when is it time to make a change? That's probably two of the biggest questions I get as a career coach when people are trying to decide, is it time to look for a new job? How much longer do I wait to get promoted? How much longer do I keep trying what I've been trying to find a new job? Sometimes you do have to be patient, and sometimes it is time for a pivot. That's what I'm going to talk about in this episode. I'm Larry Cornett, and this is Invincible Career. This is issue 622, 622, When to Be Patient and When to Pivot, if you go to newsletter.invinciblecareer.com. This comes up a lot. As a career coach, I hear this a lot with the folks that I coach. Sometimes it's people that are in a job and they're trying to figure out, how much longer do I wait this out? How many more years do I wait to get a promotion? Sometimes it's with folks who are in the middle of a job search and they're getting a bit frustrated. Heard this recently. Someone said, "Nothing is working. I can't find a job." So I was talking with an acquaintance about their job search strategy recently. This isn't a client. It's not a friend or family member. So don't try to figure out if this is you, if you're listening. Just somebody I kind of know. They complained that nothing that they had tried was working. Nothing seemed to be working. So they mentioned that they had written and shared articles on social media. So sharing stuff on social media, sharing stuff on LinkedIn. But the engagement wasn't very good. They weren't happy with the likes, the comments, that kind of stuff. They had searched for jobs, but couldn't find what they were seeking. They said, "I can't find anything that would be relevant for me." So I asked a few questions. I said, well, how many articles have you written? You said you'd written some articles and shared them. How long have you been doing this, right? And they said two articles. Okay. And then I asked, how long have you been searching and browsing through the relevant job listings on LinkedIn or other job sites? And they said, well, about a week. A week. Okay, folks. I'm sorry, but sometimes just a little more effort and a little more patience are required. That just isn't enough effort and time. And it seems that over the past years, maybe a decade or so, we have turned into an instant gratification nation. We have ubiquitous internet access. That's been going on for a while. We have really fast smartphones that we carry around in our pockets everywhere. We have access to thousands of online services that do almost everything you can imagine. Overnight shipping, products at our fingertips. And now the rise of artificial intelligence and instant answers has made us expect to have really quick and easy answers and instant results. I'm not surprised that we feel this way. You flip on your TV and you can watch any movie you want within seconds. You can look something up on ChatGPT and get an answer within seconds on your phone. So you may start to feel like, hey, where's my instant results? But it doesn't work that way. And the reason it doesn't work that way is that your easy access is everyone's easy access. So thousands and thousands and thousands of people, actually even more. I was looking at some numbers today. I think this year LinkedIn passed over 1 billion members. They have 1 billion people on the platform, I think, as of January 2025. So let's not even say thousands. There's millions, 1 billion people. that everyone is posting, they're sharing, they're commenting, they're competing for attention. Everyone is trying to get attention. They're trying to get a job. They're trying to get engagement. So any advantage you think you might have by using these tools doesn't exist because everyone else has them too. And I looked back on what I've been doing, and someone said, hey, I've written 2 articles and shared them. Over the past 8 years or so, I've probably published over 1,000 posts and articles. Probably over 1,000. I think it's over 600 just with Invincible Career, my newsletter. I started writing on Medium back in 2017. And I remember I gave myself a challenge and I said, I'm going to write and publish an article every single day for like a month or 2 months straight. I don't remember which, but that's what it took for me to grow my audience. I launched my Substack newsletter back in 2019. And I had a newsletter before that, but I got real serious about writing and publishing a newsletter in 2019 and then putting out this podcast. And now I have a YouTube channel. And I've been doing this every week, multiple times a week, for years and years and years. And I can tell you, in the early days and even now, there's stuff I put out that gets no attention, gets no comments, gets no likes. But I just keep doing it. Why do I keep doing it? Well, sometimes there's a long tail in this stuff and you have to be patient. That's why I am talking about patience in this article, in this podcast episode. I've had stuff that I published back in 2017 that someone came across. They read it on Medium and they contacted me. They asked me about coaching from something I wrote in 2017. Sometimes it takes a while. I have slowly built up a decent number of readers on Medium and Substack. I'm not a huge kind of publisher like some folks, but it's okay. I'm doing okay. But I'll tell you, it's only been in the last 3 months, kind of this year, that my subscriber numbers really took off. I think I tripled my subscribers in 3 months this year. Some of that was to me being willing to be more controversial, to kind of put myself out there, to have a really, really strong opinion. And that had been kind of beaten out of me by years of corporate life and being an executive and towing the line and having a PR team and everybody's, like, don't offend people, don't have a strong opinion. We got to appeal to the masses. It took me a while to overcome that. So yeah, I've been very consistent and now been very controversial, and finally it's taking off. And that's patience, folks. 8 years of writing and writing and writing, and finally it's kind of working. Not just 2 articles, like 1,000. And I have a lot of failings, believe me. You can talk to my wife and friends. They'll tell you all about my failings. But I do have some personality traits that help me with this. I'm very persistent. I always have been. I don't like to give up. And I'm patient. I will keep grinding away at something for years and years and years. You don't get a PhD just by kind of jumping into a class or 2 and writing your dissertation and getting back out. It took a long time for me to do that. And I was persistent and I hate giving up. So I got it. I've talked about this. I've been working out, exercising almost every day for the past 16 years. Day in and day out. And it took probably 4 years of lifting weights like 5 days a week consistently before I started seeing some decent results. So it took patience. And I do it because it makes me feel better. I've been building and running my own businesses since 2010. I have not returned to having a job. I don't work for anyone else. That's taken a lot of persistence and consistency and patience, lots of patience, and staying the course. But I've been doing it since 2010. I've been writing something every single day, easily since 2017, probably a little bit before that. And I write something every single day been doing it for years and years and years and years. I journal every morning. You know that I've put together some morning journals that you can buy yourself. I have a link to that. If you go to newsletter.invinciblecareer.com, scroll down, I talk about the journal. This is issue 622, When to Be Patient, When to Pivot. Spring is here, so it is time for the spring journal. I've got a journal for every season. It's kind of fun. So I write something every day, every morning. So I'm stubborn, if nothing else. Perhaps there have been times I should have given up. I do. I know when to give up. My tech startup failed. I finally shut it down after 3 to 4 years. It was time to give up. And I know there are times that other people definitely would have given up if they'd been in my situation, because I've watched them do exactly that. They've written a little bit and then they quit when they don't get the accolades and the adoring fans commenting. They just give up and stop doing it. Or they start a business and they do it for a few months and then they realize how hard it is and they burn out and give up and go back to a job. So there are times when you just have to be patient. You just need to be patient. And you can't expect instant success. It's fun when it happens. And some people do have that happen. You can't look at that and expect it and go, well, that's going to happen for me. There are a lot of people that folks assume are an overnight success. But if you talk to that person, they're like, yeah, I'm an overnight success if you count the last 10 years of hard work. Things take time. Networking and connecting with people takes time. That is a huge strategy that I talk about for your job search, for building a business, for getting ahead in your career. It's about the people you know. It really is. We don't work in a vacuum. You don't work for yourself, selling to yourself and only with yourself. It's a world of people. So it's all about the people, and networking takes time. You can't just flip a switch and get something and get a favor out of people. No one likes to be used that way. So it takes time to build relationships. Building an audience, especially an engaged audience, takes time. You've got to show up. You got to show up every day, every week. You've got to engage with other people's content. You got to engage when people make comments on your stuff and show them that you appreciate it. A lot of people forget to do that. That takes time. It takes commitment. And looking for a new job in a really terrible market, in a struggling economy, takes time. And I'm talking about what's going on in the U.S. right now. It's not a good market. It is pretty bad. I'm not going to get into all the politics of it, but safe to say that many people who are looking for a job are finding it challenging. There have been a lot of layoffs. There are continuing to be layoffs and firings. So the market is saturated with employees that are out of work and looking. It's going to take time. And if you've already invested many years in your current career, so you've been doing it for a while, you may need to be more patient than someone who's just looking for an entry-level job. I've shared this data before, but it can often take approximately 1 month for every year of your experience to find a suitable new job. So you could find maybe a really easy job or give up and just take a job working at a coffee shop. If you work in tech and you're like, I can't find anything, I'm just going to take a job at Starbucks. Oh, even then it might be challenging. But this kind of holds true. If I look at a lot of people I know, people I've worked with, and friends and family members, people with more experience, it can take a month for every year of experience. So you have 12 years of experience, you better expect to be looking for about a year. And I know some people have been doing that. I know some very talented, well-connected executives, but they had a lot of experience and it took them a year, 2 years to find another good executive role. It takes a while. So you got to be patient. Also, you may need to be patient if you have a lot of existing commitments, and change would impact that. It would disrupt that. You can't just up and make a huge change to your life because you don't have that luxury. You're not a young single person anymore. For example, maybe your family depends on your income. Maybe you are the sole income or most of the income. Or you don't want to just yank your kids out of the local school and move. So you can't just quit your job, and you can't just jump at a new opportunity that would uproot your family. So you're going to have to be a little more patient in a situation where maybe you would have quit and walked away, but now you don't have the luxury of doing that. So if you have a job right now and you don't love it, you're kind of frustrated, which is pretty common, but you look around and you realize that this current job market is pretty bad. It's pretty bad. You may need to be patient and write it out. I've told people this. Like, if you have a job and it's covering your bills, write it out. Sure, you should still look around. I tell people this all the time. Very few people listen. I don't even care if you're happy in your job. If you're super happy in your job, you should still be looking around to see what's available in the market. You should do some light interviewing. You can treat it as a validation exercise in that case, right? So let's say you are happy. Say you have a great job. Do this. Kick the tires on a few opportunities. See what's out there. Find out, are you being paid what you should be? Maybe you get a job offer and you're like, wow, that's less than what I'm making. Why would I take that? Or maybe you get an offer, and this happened to me once. That was a huge raise over my current salary. I wasn't looking to leave. I kind of did an interview as a favor to a friend, and the offer they made me was something I couldn't refuse. So I found out I was not being paid what I should have been paid in the market. I left. So you can find that out. You can find out, are you at the level you should be? Maybe you've been told, yeah, we can't promote you. It's just no room to move you, and you're not quite ready for that next level. You got to show us. You've heard that, I'm sure. You got to demonstrate that you are going above and beyond, and you are operating at that next level before we promote you. Well, what if you interview and somebody says, yeah, we'll give you that next level. Easily, we'll promote you. Maybe it's time to leave and get what I call the Silicon Valley promotion. Moving between companies. Find out if you're being given the kind of opportunities and responsibilities you could be. Maybe the scale of what you're doing and what you're learning and the new things you're being exposed to aren't as great as you wish they were. And you interview and find out, wow, I could be doing something completely different. That would help me grow. That would position me for the future. Maybe I should take this. Maybe you have realized your manager isn't as supportive or mentoring you as much as you would hope, and you interview and find somebody who's willing to kind of take you on as a mentee, coach you, help you grow. That could be interesting. I've definitely experienced that, where a new manager really invested in me and helped my career grow, so it was worth changing jobs. But sometimes you do have to be patient. I guess if you look back at my early years in my career, it's a kind of an example. I hadn't thought about it much, but I looked back on it, and I had been at a few different companies, but I worked for almost 10 years before I got what I would consider my big break. And I started landing promotions that moved me up the leadership ladder. So 10 years, folks. Patience. And then I started getting promotions, and I went from like a senior designer to a lead, to a manager, to a senior manager, to a director. I got promoted year after year. And later, in about 2 years after that, got bumped to vice president. So I moved very quickly up the ladder in a period of 6 years. But before that, 10 years really, without much of a change in my career. That's patience. But it happened. After 10 years, I finally I finally got the big break. So that's talking about the patient side of the equation, but when is it time to pivot? When is it time to make a change? So if you feel like you're spinning your wheels, and I mean for a while, not after 2 weeks, if you're not getting any real traction, and I mean a lot more than 2 articles you've written and shared, or you're running out of time. Sometimes you are running out of time. You may need to pivot and change your strategies, and that can be with a career, it can be with a business, it can be with a lot of things, right? Even internally. If you're not getting promoted, it's time to change things up. Because at some point, more patience not going to help. Putting in the time isn't going to help. There are people who've put in the time and they have stayed pretty much the same level for like 20, 25 years. And some people are okay with that. Some people are not. Also, you may not be in that situation. You may have already been impacted by layoff. Maybe you lost your job or your business has failed. So you don't have the luxury of being patient. You have to make a change to survive. You got to do something to get money coming back in to support yourself and support your family. And the degree of change depends on your situation. Depends on your unique situation, how long you've been trying other options, your current strategy, and what you want as your desired outcome. Because sometimes a small change won't give you what you're seeking. It's going to be a bigger change that's required. So how much you decide to pivot your career depends on what's possible and what's necessary, a combination of that. And I'm going to describe kind of 4 different levels. There's a small pivot, a medium, a large, and a massive pivot. So a small pivot is finding a new job with an employer, but you're staying in the same industry and the same vertical, right? You're not changing professions. You're not changing the industry or the vertical. And you're just looking for somebody who's still hiring. This is what most people end up doing, right? So it's a tiny pivot versus just staying in your job or whatever it might be. Medium would be find a job with an employer who's in the same industry, but a different vertical. So maybe you find a job in e-commerce instead of gaming, right? But they're both still in tech. They're in IT, but it's not the same vertical. A large pivot would be finding a new job with an employer in a completely different industry. So maybe you leave tech and you go into transportation, as an example, or food production. I mean, there could be all kinds of different industries. I linked some of this if you're kind of wondering what is the definition and some examples of an industry versus a vertical. If you go to newsletter.invinciblecareer.com, this is When to Be Patient, When to Pivot, issue 622. And I linked something that can help you understand kind of that distinction, because it is one that's a little bit confusing sometimes. So you had a large pivot, could be a completely different industry or geography. And I've talked about this before, maybe looking at jobs in Europe instead of the US. And then finally, the biggie, the massive pivot. This is changing your profession entirely. Using and leveraging your transferable talents and skills. And we all have a core foundation of talent and knowledge and skills and even experiences that can be transferred to completely different professions. I think people get stuck sometimes and think that's not possible. But a lot of what we do is foundational. And a smart person who's good at that stuff can jump professions and succeed. And like I've said before, a good manager, good example, a people manager, a good manager is a good manager. I don't care what the business is. So somebody who's a good manager of a tech organization would be a good manager running a team at a hardware store. Good management is good management. So you may have to change professions with a massive pivot or build your own business. I'm a fan of this. I talk about it all the time. So that's another massive pivot that could happen. The size of the pivot depends on what you do for a living. So that's why it's very personal. how deeply your job has been impacted, or your business if you run a business, and how serious you are. How serious are you about doing what it takes to survive and thrive in this economic downturn, in this bad market? And we are in a pretty bad job market. It's affecting the U.S. right now. Unfortunately, when things affect a large player like the U.S., it tends to have ripple effects and affect other countries too, especially in industries that span countries like tech. So we might be in for a few years. So let's talk about a small pivot. So a smaller pivot is what most people do when they're seeking a new job. They stay in the same profession, so they've already invested in their profession. They have an education, they have experience, they have skills. They're not going to change professions. And they're not going to change their industry or the vertical they work in because maybe they like it. Maybe it's what's available where they live. Maybe they feel like that can transfer more easily and they can find a job more quickly, which is usually true. So all you got to do is find a new employer. So an example of this would be making a small change, pretty small change from being a designer, like a UX designer at Amazon, which is an e-commerce company in tech, to taking a design job at eBay, which is also an e-commerce company in tech. And I worked at eBay, and I've had several clients work at Amazon. People do move back and forth. That happens. So that's a small pivot. A medium pivot is also fairly common when people change jobs. I see it with clients. I've done it. I've seen it with friends of mine, family members too. So someone stays in their same profession. They're not changing professions. They stay in the same industry. So maybe they stay in the tech industry, but they move to a new vertical. And I did this, right? So an example would be like I did, staying in the consumer tech space. I was in Silicon Valley, but I moved from the vertical of e-commerce. I worked at eBay to web search, which is very technical, which was what I did at Yahoo. So I ended up running consumer products for Yahoo Search. Pretty big change. That's why it's kind of medium. I was still, when I made the change, a design leader. So I hadn't changed my profession. I was still in design, and I was still in tech, and I was still in Silicon Valley, but I changed verticals. And going from e-commerce to search was a bit of a jump. I had to learn a lot about search technology. It was a very different business, very different revenue model, shifting to advertising. So yeah, that's a medium pivot. That's something that you might have to do. It's also fairly common for most folks. Now let's move on, and I'll talk about a large pivot. So let's say you're currently out of work and the job market's kind of bad right now. You may need to make a larger pivot. If you've been struggling to find a job for a long time and time is running out. Time's running out. You're running out of money. You got to do something. So you could look for a new job and land a new job with an employer in a completely different industry. For example, I know somebody that did this. They left tech, kind of core tech industry, and went to transportation. There was a lot of stuff that transferred with what they did, but that's the change they made. Completely different industry. I also know people that change geographies. That's another big pivot. That's a large pivot. And they left the US and went to Europe. So yeah, that example I gave, this person left kind of the core tech industry and took a job of applying their profession in design to the transportation industry. And that's like a UX designer who did design work for a tech company and had done work in the Valley for a while, and now was doing design work with a logistics company. Because, as has often been said, almost every company is realizing they're also going to be a technology company. And so logistics companies are using software to do planning. They're starting to use AI too. And stuff still needs to be designed. The interfaces, the dashboards, the reports, you name it. So that's a large pivot. That's a large pivot, but sometimes that's what it takes, and those skills transferred. So that's what I mean. Like, a lot of these skills can transfer to a completely new industry. And I've worked with a few clients who got a bit frustrated by the US job market or were excited about the opportunity of moving somewhere, and they moved to Europe. They took roles with companies that are based there. That's a large pivot. That's a big life change. So they took their profession and they relocated it to a new type of company in a completely new geography and did what they had to do to be employed, right? And live a pretty good life. I know some folks doing it and they love living in Europe. It's been pretty exciting for them. So that leaves me with the last one, which is a massive pivot. So you may reach a financial breaking point, and a massive pivot is required to get back on your feet. So your time's run out, your bank account is dry, and you need a drastic change. You need a big, big career change to survive and to thrive. That happens. That happens. It's not always about time running out or about money running out. Sometimes you just are fed up and your first act career is come to a conclusion. You're like, okay, that was good. I had a good run. I loved the experience, but I'm kind of done with it. And I want to do something different with the rest of my life. I want a different lifestyle. So in that case, you may need to change professions entirely. And I know people have done that have gone from one profession to another. I kind of did that. You know, I had been a designer and been a design leader for most of my career, and then I went into product management and became a product leader and executive. So very related, but a different profession. Very different profession. Or you may need to deconstruct your job and everything you do and reconstruct that toolbox I talk about, that toolbox of your knowledge and your talents and your skills and all that experience into a whole new package to work in an entirely new industry. And that's kind of what I did over 9 years ago now. I left my profession because even after I left the corporate world, I had a tech startup and I was still doing stuff with tech as a consultant. But 9 years ago, I left it behind. That was a big change. It was a scary change. That's what I call a massive pivot. So I had been a product and design executive, and I'd been working in the tech industry in Silicon Valley. I left it. I literally moved away. And I did it so I could create a business to do something completely different. So I became, as you know, if you've been listening to this, a leadership coach and a career coach. And I've now become a business coach as well. So I do a lot of business coaching and leadership coaching and career coaching, obviously. And I've been doing that for, over 9 years. I took parts of my past job. So I talk about that deconstruction, reconstruction. So I took parts of it, the stuff I loved doing and enjoyed doing, and I felt like I was good at doing, mentoring my team, doing performance coaching, hiring talent and what that looks like, reviewing and interviewing people and figuring out who to hire, all comes in real handy for what I do now. And I took different components of my skills and my experiences to craft a new beginning for myself. And I did this because I wanted a big change. I wanted the freedom and lifestyle that a solopreneur business could give me. I wanted to live somewhere completely different. I wanted to be in the mountains. I wanted to reinvest in my relationships and my health and have my life back a little bit. I wanted to work remotely. I was really tired of commuting, being on the freeway and sitting in offices all day. I've been doing that for like 20 years. No more. I really wanted the freedom of what this business can do for me. So that was a massive pivot, but I've never been happier, even though it was a little scary. And it's still hard, but it was worth it. And I know the thought of changing professions is overwhelming. It's overwhelming. But making a pivot that massive could enable you to overcome the economic uncertainty we're all facing and overcome what's going on with this job market, which is pretty bad. And the good news is it's possible. A lot of people have changed professions and succeeded and been happier. A lot of people have made significant career changes and achieved success with it and also been pretty happy with it. And I've interviewed a few of these people for this very podcast. So if you go back through the podcast, you can find Isabel Stern. Emily Schneider is another example. And then Maureen Wiley-Clough. I did podcast interviews with these folks and talked about why they made a change in their career, what was the impetus for that, and how things have been on the other side of it. So you could look for that in the podcast, or you could go to newsletter.invinciblecareer.com and search for Isabel Stern, Emily Schneider, Maureen Wiley-Clough, and listen to those podcast episodes and hear how they did it and how they feel about it. Because I did it, they did it, and you can too. You could make a big change like this too, if that's what it is going to take for you to survive and thrive. If it's going to get you back on your feet, if it's going to get money flowing back into your bank account, if it's going to make you happier, it's worth it. It's worth doing, even if it's a little bit scary. And I'm here to support you if you want to discuss it. I talk about this all the time. I don't think enough people take me up on it. I'm not scary. It's easy to talk to me. And it's a free phone call. That initial consulting call just to talk with you. I'm not going to hard sell you. I don't do that. I just want to talk. I'll listen and I'll try to help as much as I can. So you can get the link to do that, to book a call with me, if you go to newsletter.invinciblecareer.com. The link to do that is all over the place, all over my newsletter, so it's pretty easy to find. Anyway, I hope this helps you think through your situation and figure out, is this the time to be patient? Stay the course, keep doing what you're doing, keep investing. You're starting to see results and it's just going to take some time. Or it might be time to make a big change because it's not working and you have put in the effort and time and it's still not working. So it's time to make a pivot. Until next time, I wish you the best of luck in becoming an opportunity magnet for the best things in life.